Good morning and welcome to day 33 of the Coronavirus Diaries of me, Jonathan King, otherwise known as Geriatric 1944. I spoke a lot about my dad in the last diary I did yesterday. I didn't really know my dad or see much of him because he died when I was 7 or 8, but I do remember I was sent off to boarding school, as we all were in that era. Horrible. I hated it, especially the one that I went to when it was then called a prep school. And I had to go down to Seaford in Sussex, miserable place. And there was a horrible headmaster there called Arthur Spring-Rice Piper, who used to beat me regularly. And I remembered at the time wondering why one of his hands was always sunk deep into his pockets. It took me many, many years to realise why. Anyway, when I was down there, and I did manage to take with me one of my cherished dolls. Well, I wouldn't say dolls. And of course, being masculine, being even at that age, 6 or 7, a male person, it was sort of allowed, but not really thoroughly approved of, to have a teddy bear or whatever. Well, what I had was a rabbit, and I called him Rabat. This is Rabat. I still have him to this day. As you can see, he's getting a little bit worn and tired now. He is, of course, 75 years old, so same age as me. And I had him and still keep him and took him down to the prep school with me. And then something appalling happened. And the appalling thing that happened was Rabbit's head came off. And I called my mother at home and said, look, this is a disaster. And it's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And of course, she organised my father, who came down and took me out for the day and had brought with him some cotton and thread and lovingly reattached Rabat's head to his body. Well, I cannot tell you how much that meant to me. And funnily enough, it's the thing I still most remember about my dad, because he was obviously by then, I suppose, in his 40s. He was a strong ex-soldier, very masculine man. He couldn't quite understand his young son, who was clearly a little bit camp. I mean, I was a raging queen even then, dear. But he actually basically expressed all the love that a father would have for his child, in tenderly sewing the head back on, saying, no, it doesn't hurt at all, does it, Rabat? And it's all fine. And reattaching the head to the body, slightly embarrassed about what he was doing. You know, it wasn't really a fatherly duty to sew the head back on a teddy bear, but he did it, and it's still attached, by the way, to this day. The rest of Rabat has got quite moth-eaten, I'm afraid, but to this day it remains there. And I still, to this day, every time I think of Rabat, I remember my dad doing that wonderful thing. Hello, Rabat. Very nice little Rabat. Anyway, just a quick reminisce about the school, which you'll find if you want to watch the film Guilty, which is for free, a 90-minute movie, and you'll find it online, and you can watch it, and I think you'll find it interesting. But I always remember Arthur Spring-Rice Piper, the horrid man, and as headmaster, slicked back black hair and black glasses, very thick pebble lenses. He was diabetic and almost blind, and he used to take a crocodile of boys walking along the seafront at Seaford, which was a dreadful place, always windy, whipped up with rain, seawater lashing us all. And we were I think by then I was about 8 or 9, and we were all there, including the new little boys. And one of the new little boys, who was probably 6 or 7, was obviously very distressed by the whole thing and very worried about being ripped away from his family and parents, as we all were. I hated Stoke House. And during the walk, he became so upset that he shat himself. And a brown dribble started cascading down his legs. Well, of course, this amused us boys like mad, because we're all horrible little children. And Arthur Springrice Piper saw it and was very embarrassed because, of course, his standing in the community was not good, that one of the boys walking with him had shat himself. So he said, look, you walk at the back, go 10 yards behind us, and all the rest of us boys come in front here in a crocodile, and we'll walk back to school very fast. And don't you dare even speak to him, because he's done a disgraceful thing and he will be punished when we get him back to school. Well, I thought this was awful, offensive and dreadful. So I fell back in line with the boy, which I have to say a very unpleasant experience. I had to put my arm around his shoulder to comfort him and kept saying to him, don't worry, it's perfectly natural, these things happen. Remember, I was 7 or 8, I was a child myself, but I just couldn't stand the way Piper was behaving. I loathed him anyway, and he loathed me, although I've later, looking back, think he actually loved me. But anyway, so I insisted on going back. Well, Piper was furious. King, if you don't join the crocodile immediately, I shall be beating you when I get back to school. You horrible, horrible boy. And I said, I just went on walking with the boy and saying, oh, cheer up, don't worry, it's not too bad, it'll be all over when you get home. Matron will see you and everything will be okay. Sure enough, got back to school, was severely beaten, and the boy was terribly grateful, I'm glad to say, and really appreciated what I'd done. Piper hated or loved me even more, and that was the end of that. Horrible man. I loved Charterhouse that I then went to when I was 12 or 13, and it was so different and so much more intelligent and humane, with good masters and interesting things to learn. But I loathed Stoke House Prep School. Funnily enough, a lot of the people who were there with me have been in touch since in the years gone by, and if one of you is reading this, do get in touch, because it's always pleasant to hear from you all. Anyway, watch a little bit more about that incident and others on the Guilty film, which you can see online. I was never that close to my dad, but I was very, very close to my mum. You'll see behind me the photos, painting of her when she was about 5 or 6, and me with her as well. I hope you enjoy these little flashes of difference in my videos. She was the most marvellous lady, and I was miserable when she passed away because she was my best friend. She was 91 and she did want to go. It's about 10 years ago now, 15 years ago. But I still miss her like mad. She really was a wonderful mother. Of course, she had to bring us all up on her own, and I had to become sort of the man of the family after my dad died. So a little bit of music, and I thought I'd give you something that isn't by me at all on this, because it will amuse you, I think. It's on our UK Records 80 Greatest Hits album, and it's a record I produced with Dame Edna Everidge, Barry Humphries as he is in reality, a lovely, wonderful, great human being who did this version of Waltzing Matilda as a disco track, because it was in the disco era. We actually did get him on Top of the Pops, which was terrific, but it didn't really sell very many. But listening to it before I decided to put it on our Greatest Hits collection, it really is hilariously funny, especially at the end when he makes ghost noises. Woo, woo. And so I think you might like to hear it. It'll cheer you up on this strange day in our lockdown. See you tomorrow.